Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. America's FBI director says Islamic State influence is on the rise in our country. His warning follows the dramatic terror attack earlier this week, where two gunmen drove all the way from Phoenix to Texas to carry it out. Federal agents estimate those are two among hundreds of ISIS followers in the U.S. who are now being bombarded with internet calls to take deadly action. Elton Simpson and Nadir Sufi are the Phoenix roommates behind the Texas terror attack and the newest faces of homegrown terrorism. The FBI says young ISIS recruits like them are being drawn in by the group's slick online war. The terrorists are using hip-hop music, productions that mimic the popular Grand Theft Auto video game, images of handsome fighters, and promises of homes and security to sell a false version of life under ISIS rule.
You're speaking to them in a language they understand, video, moving imagery, and music. People do want to belong to tribes, and this is saying, join our tribe.
At least 53 Americans have been charged with trying to travel to Syria to fight with the ISIS group last year. But there may be thousands inside the U.S. consuming the online poison.
Back in February, the FBI Director James Comey said that we have investigations ongoing into ISIS-related activity right now in all 50 U.S. states.
With Skype, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media, the FBI estimates it's posting some 90,000 messages every day, telling followers to kill where you are if you can't travel to Syria to join the fight.
Before the advent of this new technology and the growth of social media, how would you reach into the basements and bedrooms of American homes?
And while the ISIS connection may begin on social media, the FBI warns if ISIS does make contact with people here in the U.S., their conversations go dark. That's because the terrorists steer them into encrypted communications, and the government can no longer follow them, making them potentially even more dangerous.
A U.S. appeals court has rejected the NSA's bulk collection of Americans' telephone records. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan said the NSA has gone too far, exceeding what Congress actually allowed. The battle highlights the tough balance between protecting privacy and the nation's security. Still, the court did not block the program, saying it is now up to Congress to decide if it should continue.
The Conservative Party has swept the re-election in Great Britain, meaning Prime Minister David Cameron will remain in charge of the government. Pollsters had predicted a razor-thin contest with Cameron's top opponents in the Labour Party, but the Conservatives won a resounding victory. Cameron has fought to balance the budget by making welfare cuts. The vote also has big implications for Britain's role in the European Union, since Cameron has promised to let voters decide if they want to keep Britain in the EU.
Here in the U.S., abortion opponents are growing increasingly frustrated with the Republican majority in Congress, so they worked so hard to elect. As Paul Strand reports, they marched on House Speaker John Boehner's office for a second time, demanding Congress start passing pro-life legislation.
These pro-life leaders brought life-size models of 20-week-old unborn babies to Capitol Hill Thursday. They wanted to show Congress just how large and well-developed these children are that can still be aborted because Republican leaders in the House won't put a 20-week abortion ban up for a vote.
Abortion is a scourge on our country, and at 20 weeks, children feel tremendous pain. And so we need to stop abortion at all levels. We need to, if 20 weeks is a good start.
Protect America's children. Stand with America's children.
These protesters point out poll after poll shows more than 60% of Americans want abortions banned on babies this size and age. They marched on Speaker John Boehner's office to show his staff these fetal models. But no one would even open the door.
This is not normal procedure. I've knocked on this door and gone in many times.
They say if Congress continues to stall, they'll be back with further protests.
All these abortion opponents say that Speaker Boehner and all the House leadership needs to hear their message. America is ready for a 20-week abortion ban. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from outside Speaker Boehner's office.
Concerns over the future of marriage in America were at a top issue at the National Day of Prayer events on Thursday. Christians across the country praying for the Supreme Court as it decides whether or not to declare same-sex marriage a constitutional right. Christian leaders like Dr. James Dobson and Hispanic leader Samuel Rodriguez say religious liberty is at stake.
It means that what I preach from my pulpit, which is the Word of God, some of it will be deemed as hate speech. There's that potential that I will be deemed as a bigot, as an intolerant human being, and then we will have laws that will begin to discriminate against me because I am a Christian. This Supreme Court decision carries the potential of initiating a chapter of intolerance towards Christians and bigotry towards Christians in the 21st century.
But the president of the Southern Baptist Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission says Christians should avoid a siege mentality. He says Christians can trust that Christ will build his church.
I think our response has to be neither capitulation nor a sense of panic or desperation. We need to recognize that marriage is resilient because the court didn't create marriage, no state created marriage. God created marriage, embedded it in the natural order, and so marriage is resilient.
Marriage wasn't the only focus on the National Day of Prayer. Americans gathered at some 43,000 prayer events from coast to coast to seek God for the country. Jennifer Wishon has more on this American tradition.
At this church in Mitchellville, Maryland, people could drive through for prayer.
We felt this would be an opportunity to just reach out to them for a few moments as they drive on by, just like they drive up to McDonald's window.
Everyone was invited.
I'm here so I can be prayed for.
We've been able to join in prayer together, thinking about our communities, thinking about public safety.
I pray for peace, for safety, not only for law enforcement, but for the community.
The theme for this year's National Day of Prayer was, Lord, hear our cry from 1 Kings.
Hear the cry and the prayer of your servant that is praying in your presence today.
On Capitol Hill, decision makers humbled themselves before God.
It is times like this when we bow our head in prayer.
Some presidential candidates took time to pray, including Senator Ted Cruz.
We pray for our leaders and ask that you give them wisdom.
Dr. Ben Carson was there too.
It is up to us who are the true believers now to stand up for what we believe, to have the courage and the faith to believe that God will get us through this difficult period.
If the believers would just take one day and everybody pray at the same time about the same, could you imagine what God would do? That's what the National Day of Prayer is about.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
As millions of Americans gathered yesterday to observe the National Day of Prayer, Pastor Saeed Abedini offered a prayer for the nation from behind bars in Iran. Pastor Saeed's birthday fell on the same day as the National Day of Prayer this year. In his letter, he invites Christians in America to unite in prayer for revival for our nation. The letter reads, "We all hope for the success of our nation and for America to be blessed. But without revival, there can be no true success or blessing." You can find a link to his letter by visiting cbnnews.com.
33 Texas prisoners are graduating this weekend as pastors, but they're still behind bars, although they are the first pastor inmates in the state's history. They are also the first graduates of a prison seminary program that is privately funded and taught by professors from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. The program has improved prisoner morale and reduced violence against guards.
Coming up, God's Air Force meet the Christian pilots taking the gospel to the ends of the earth. Christian missionaries travel to the far corners of the world to spread the gospel. Many places are simply dots on a map and nearly inaccessible.
But some areas that used to take weeks or months to get to are now just an airplane flight away. That is, if you have a place to land. David Mims tells us how one Indonesian tribe made that happen and the Christian aviation group that came to visit.
Missionaries came to the village of Mokadoma in Papua, Indonesia, with a goal.
Our goal here is to plant a church that can reach out and reach the rest of the Wano people.
But first, they needed to get the Wano missionaries there. And to do that, they needed an airstrip. It took them years, working mostly with shovels and sticks and backbreaking labor.
2 years of work to get this thing done. And to see the plane circling by the first time, it's just surreal. It's just like it's happening. And he comes in and lands, and you just feel the emotions. You know, it's so cool to have an airplane land, touch the ground.
The plane belongs to Mission Aviation Fellowship. MEF serves people living in isolated areas where transportation or communication is difficult. They enable the work of some 1,500 churches, healthcare organizations, relief agencies, and mission groups. They deliver Bible translation teams.
We're here to celebrate the finishing of the complete Bible in the Hoopla language. So this is it. This is exciting stuff for us. We've been partnering with the missionaries that have been working to translate this thing for years and years and years. And so it's just great to be able to come and join them in the celebration.
They fly mercy missions.
This is Mika. He was climbing in some trees yesterday with some other kids, and he fell, and a branch impaled his abdomen. A man that was there finally noticed him and pulled that branch off and ran to our house, and we could feel this piece of wood in there, you know, really like an inch and a half long, really clear, just above where it had gone in.
A frantic call for help was placed by shortwave radio to MEF.
Lord, we just pray that the infection hasn't set in and that doctor can quickly take care of the issues and he and the family can come back here quickly. We put these things in your hands, in your name. Amen.
Mika and his family were flown to a hospital where doctors found that the wood had pierced both small intestine walls. He was rushed to surgery. In less than a week, Mika had recovered enough to be flown home.
We were really thankful because if that wood stayed in there any longer, it could cause infection. Even another day or two could have made things much worse.
Remember that airstrip we talked about earlier? Well, it's used to fly newly trained Wano missionaries to other parts of the island to share the word.
These are my two good friends, Dugiru and Liku, and they're from our home village of Mokundama, and they've become mature in their faith, and now they're down here in the lowlands in Iratoi, sharing the teaching, the good news to some of their relatives that live down here.
Each year, MEF US serves more than 600 nonprofits, local government, and mission organizations all over the world. They enable ministries to provide isolated people with vital services and goods while sharing the love of Christ in a tangible way. Some call them God's Air Force. I'm David Mims, CBN News.
Very tumultuous and bloody time. In the middle of it was this group of the followers of Jesus who was spreading the word. They could have been killed every day.
Producers Mark Burnett and Roma Downey take us behind the scenes of AD The Bible Continues. Next.
Hi everybody, Lori Johnson here, CBN's health reporter. Have you heard about probiotics? They're kind of new but very important. Probiotics are the good bacteria we need to put back into our gut, also known as the small intestine. The reason we need to replace these good bacteria is because they're wiped out by things like antibiotics and processed foods. You can read more about probiotics in my Healthy Living blog on cbnnews.com.
The epic television series AD The Bible Continues is about halfway over, but there are still a few weeks left to catch up if you've missed out.
Indeed, the AD series is produced by Mark Burnett and Roma Downey. Their first series on the Bible drew more than 100 million viewers to the History Channel. I sat down with a husband and wife team for a behind-the-scenes look at this latest project.
Are you, or are you not, the Messiah?
I am. And soon you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God.
How dare you speak his name? The charge is blasphemy. He deserves to die.
It's very, very relatable, isn't it?
Roma Downey and Mark Burnett are the producers, bringing the pages of the Bible to life for today's viewers.
Clearly, the story of the Bible, and in the case of AD, the Bible Continues, the story of Acts of the Apostles, really grabs people emotionally. But then you've got to make it very well and execute on the promise. And, you know, that's our job. I guess we're probably experts in making television.
That would be an understatement, as Burnett is the engine behind hits like Survivor, The Apprentice, The Voice, Shark Tank, and the Bible miniseries.
When we were filming the Bible series in Morocco, we wished we'd had, more than 10 hours. We wished we'd had 100 hours because the stories are so deep and so rich. And we decided while we were there and then that we would take a deeper dive into the book of Acts.
Have you ever stared into a man's face as you thrust a sword into
This
his
12-hour series takes audiences through the first 10 chapters of the book of Acts, the first decades following the resurrection of Jesus. It's an epic production that Mark Burnett describes as Game of Thrones meets the Bible.
Very tumultuous and bloody time. Those apostles and the growing group of disciples could have been killed at any moment. It was a power struggle between the Romans, the temple authorities, the zealots. In the middle of it was this group of the followers of Jesus who was spreading the word. They could have been killed every day.
This man walks with this Son of God.
I do not! I don't know him! I've never seen him before!
Following Christ wasn't popular at that time, and we see the real-life script moving from the Bible and history books to today's headlines.
Here we have, with AD, so much of the story is about the persecution of the early disciples. And it's easy, I think, for people to say, oh, that happened 2,000 years ago. But it is happening today. And we need to step up and we need to take care of each other.
So, in addition to shining a light on biblical persecution, this Hollywood husband and wife is helping rescue, restore, and eventually return thousands of Middle East Christians who fled their homes to escape persecution at the hands of the ISIS terror group. The couple has started the Cradle Fund to combat the crisis in the cradle of Christianity.
This fund has managed to bring 72,000 Middle Eastern Christians safely through the winter. There were 500,000 displaced. Imagine escaping being killed, crucified in fact, but then to freeze to death in the Syrian winter, Iraqi winter. Because of the success of our shows, we have a spotlight that lands on us from time to time, and yet we're just the catalyst, and God is the author. And so, but as the light is shining here, we thought it's an opportunity to reflect it back and to make some noise for the persecution of Christians overseas.
That noise will continue.
It will be defiled.
Yes. And Jerusalem will rise up and there will be war.
Exactly.
As this rare and epic television series plays out on the small screen for at least 12 episodes.
There's lots of big, epic event series on television, but only the Bible series, and now AD, the Bible continues. And we're hoping this goes on for many years. We're not thinking this is 1 year. We're already in anticipation of great ratings, scripting season 2.
The AD Bible Continues airs Sunday nights on NBC.
And if you're behind like me, you can catch up with previous episodes online. We will be right back.
Well, it is Friday, so that means it is time for our regular family-friendly movie reviews with Bob Waliszewski. He is with Focus on the Family's entertainment review department called Plugged In Online. Well, Bob, let's start with the new action comedy, Hot Pursuit. How does this one stand up for families?
Ephraim, it didn't stand up very well. In fact, I would say that not very many families would want to be in hot pursuit of Hot Pursuit. Okay, weak pun, I get it. Reese Witherspoon and Sofia Vergara, there's so much potential in this. In fact, I kind of like the premise. Reese's character is this policewoman, straight by the book, wants to do everything right, most everything right, where Sophia's character is the wife of a drug kingpin who gets murdered, and Reese's character has to get her to trial safely in a witness protection program. The problem with this film is that there's a lot of jokes that are at the expense of putting people down, which isn't funny the first time. This one does it multiple times. It gets really old quickly. And a lot of sleazy dialogue in this film as well. Nothing explicit visually, but just the dialogue is so disappointing. So we gave this one, Ephraim, a mere 2 out of 5 for family friendliness. Not one I recommend.
Okay, well, there is a much more serious new movie out based on a true story. It is called Noble. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's only in about 17 cities, but in the CBN universe, I know that people listening could have the potential in certain cities. They could check that online, what those cities are. But this is a much more noble film, Noble is. It tells the true story of Christina Noble. I didn't know anything about her. Let's say that she's a very Mother Teresa-esque woman who ended up having a very rough life, and then feels she senses this dream to go to Vietnam and help orphan kids. And in real life, she did that. She's still alive. She's still helping orphans, and that in the credits roll, we learned that she's helped over 700,000 orphans in Vietnam. So a very inspiring, encouraging story. It gets a 3 from us out of 5. And the reason why not better, even though it's so encouraging, is that there's a sexual assault scene in the film, not explicit, but it's there, and I want people to know that. And there's also one scene that is a little bit more explicit. It's trying to show that her husband was unfaithful to her. I think there would have been a better way to handle that particular scene, but it's there as well.
All right, well, real quickly, there are actually a number of other good options in theaters right now. Give us a few.
Yeah, Avengers, we gave a 3.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. Woman in Gold has great potential. Even the Paul Blart film, which continues to do pretty well, critics absolutely hated it. And quite frankly, I'm not the biggest fan either. But from a family perspective, it is something you could take your kids to if you're just looking for something, the positive I could take the family to.
All right, Bob, thank you so much.
You bet. Talk next week.
And that is it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues that you care most about at cbnnews.com.
We'd love to hear what you think about the stories. You can find us at cbn.com on Facebook and Twitter as well. Bye-bye.